Remembering again that energy sector essentially produces 75% of the global greenhouse gas emissions, mitigating the energy sector obviously is a big deal, and health benefits obviously are going to be massive as well. This is again a nice schematic from the Lancet, which looked at Lancet has a series of articles looking at health benefits of, they call it planetary health, health benefits of mitigations in different sectors like agriculture and transportation and power and so on. So here we are looking at primary energy, fuel cycle, secondary energy, and energy services. So here we have extraction of raw material, fuel source phase, power generation, emissions and waste, processing involved there, transportation involved, as well as dirty fuels like coal, lignite, but natural gas and oil are better, of course, than coal. Biofuels, geothermal, solar, tidal, and wave are increasing in their percentage of the total energy production. But if you look at any country, even the friendliest of countries like Germany, in terms of climate action, the total renewable is only, nationally speaking, only about 15% or less, even though specific regions of Germany, like northern Germany, they are producing so much renewable energy that neither they nor their neighbors can use it up. So they have obviously gone ahead in terms of renewable generation. That's much more than what is used locally and in the region. But nonetheless, over time, you expect renewables to continue to increase along with transportation changes like electric vehicles and so on. So we'll look at electrification, everything in a minute. Nuclear still remains a renewable with in terms of carbon emission, but remains mostly not accepted by most communities in terms of safety concerns, even though newer generation of nuclear reactors are supposed to be much safer. But what happened in Fukushima in Japan spooked not only Japan but also Germany. So Germany's coal consumption didn't go down as fast as it could if it ramped up nuclear. And nuclear fusion is expected to make an entry at some point, which could make a huge difference in terms of how much energy you can produce as a renewable, okay, and safely. So all those are related to hydrocarbons, hydrogen and electricity as a mix of fuels, leading to global and local emissions, and of course those are secondary energy sources. And energy services include, as we saw in the pie chart, energy sector emits 75%, but it's used up by transportation, buildings, agriculture, industries, and so on, right? So transport, heating, lighting, electrical appliances, industries, commerce, and agriculture, leading again to lack of access to energy, potentially, in terms of routes to adverse health effects, so emissions, lack of energy, unhealthy lifestyles, and accidents. Okay, this of course altogether lead to climate change. So remember, energy is very good for health, right? Air conditioning is good, heating is good, air purifiers are good, ACs in cars are good, and so on. But they all again contribute to climate change and health effects here in terms of households, communities, and of course globally as well, in terms of pollution that lasts a long time, like N2O, methane, HFCs, and so on, and CO2 of course, right? So the International Renewable Energy Association argues that renewable energy and electrification alone can deliver 75% of energy-related CO2 emissions reductions needed. This is a very bullish view. Renewables and energy efficiency boosted by substantial electrification can provide over 90% of the necessary reductions in energy-related carbon emissions. Again, very optimistic view, because practically speaking, electric vehicles are still growing in their share of the market, but they are still very small in number compared to internal combustion engines, for example. But also the so-called range anxiety, how far can you drive with one charge of an electrical car, remains very high, and there are even reports of people switching back to internal combustion engines because of some issues they faced after buying electric vehicles. So incentivizing electric vehicles, providing the grid infrastructure to charge as often as needed, and to increase the vehicle technology to increase the range of these batteries. It's all kind of plays into the persistence of the older grid structure as well as older energy sources which have to be dealt with. Nonetheless, looking briefly at co-benefits of climate change mitigation strategies in electricity production. Mitigation strategies include decreasing fossil fuel consumption, which is a no-brainer, and yet we are not very close to being able to do that in terms of invested infrastructure of transportation and vehicle manufacturing, etc., that drive fossil fuel combustion to be continued for a while. Increase in renewable energy, of course. Intermediate impacts of decreasing fossil fuel combustion would lead to decrease in particulate matter and decrease in air pollution, with impacts on premature mortality, which runs in many millions across the world, with more than 1 million for India and more than 1 million for China in terms of air pollution killing people prematurely. Decreases in cardiovascular disease, respiratory disease and asthma, and of course productivity, well-being, because if you live in an urban center and if it's highly polluted, your outdoor activity is going to be curtailed, which is going to have a negative impact on your health, right? So possible worker health impacts are the outcome of increase in renewable energy, in addition to uncertain life cycle impacts as intermediate steps to co-benefits. Okay, so energy sector remains a huge target for mitigating its impacts on emissions and the potential co-benefits on health. There are many ideas of how to mix renewable energy, traditional energy, smart grid, microgrid, nanogrid, and so on. And I have a whole chapter and many podcasts on that topic under drawdown, under bending the curve. So under bending the curve, we also have mitigation of agriculture sector, and grid technologies for reducing short-lived climate pollutants which have great impact on health. So please look those up if you want to follow up further on these ideas. That they don't focus so much on health, but they just focus on either drawing down carbon or on reducing the concentration of short-lived climate pollutants, leading to improvements in or reducing our impact on climate change, which has health co-benefits. Okay.